Gusto mo ata ng picture, Cheska?
Hoy, hindi ah!
Dito ka!
Wait lang! Members! Hoy! Andyan pala kayo!
By the way, I'm Mari Pamposa.
And I am Francesca Uy, and this is
A Day in Our Lives at Sobrang OA!
Iskaim nila!
Another day, another sleigh. Welcome to our mini vlog where we venture our daily activities as an scholar ng bayan through a philosophical approach.
As you can see, I am attending an online class about math and thinking how hard the topic is, while Mary, on the other hand, is actually experiencing having difficulties in solving math problems firsthand. This is similar to what is discussed in Section 2 of The Origin of Ideas in David Hume's book titled An Enquiry Concerning Human Understanding. According to Hume, there is a difference between the perception of the senses and the vivacity of the original sentiment. What we are doing in our vlog is actually an example of this. Thinking about how hard a subject is actually different from experiencing how tough a math problem can be.
There are two perceptions of the mind. The first one is impression. These are our more lively perception like what we hear, see, or feel. The second one is thoughts or ideas. In this case, we make an opinion or conclusion based on our impressions. Here, after understanding the lesson, I applied my learning by solving word problems.
Hume claims that all objects of human reason or enquiry, meaning anything that we can be curious about, may be divided into two kinds.
The first one is the relationship of ideas that depends on the operation of thought. Here, Cheska is learning the effect of fertilizers on plant growth by reading articles on the internet. The second one is matters of facts that are discovered through experience alone. I learned the same topic but with a different approach. I conducted an experiment and made a conclusion based on what I saw and observed. And because of this, cause and effects are discoverable not by reason but by experience. Cheska cannot make an exact estimation on how tall a specific plant can be when given fertilizer. But I can make a conclusion since I conducted an experiment.
But disclaimer, it is not entirely impossible for the opposite of matters of facts to happen. In this case, for instance, some plants may have different reactions when given fertilizers.
Hume also claims that all ideas are copies of impressions, and to prove that, he made the following argument. First, whenever we reflect on our thoughts and ideas, we realize that they can be traced back to simpler ideas. These ideas originated from past experiences or emotions. For example, whenever we think of the word love, our thoughts go back to the events where we experienced that emotion. However, our thoughts are confined within the limits of what is offered by senses and experiences. Another example is when we are reading a story based on a certain character's point of view. Our knowledge about the story is limited based on what the character knows since it is told from their point of view. Second, if a person is incapable of any type of sensation, they are also unable to form related ideas. But if their senses were restored, they would quickly be able to conceive those ideas. For example, the blind may not be able to understand the notion of colors, and the deaf cannot comprehend the meaning of sounds. Of course, there are times where we have vacant breaks. And now, Cheska refrained from using ChatGPT for her research paper while I am applying a certain rule to solve a mathematical problem. This is what we call demonstrative reasoning and moral reasoning. Demonstrative reasoning concerns the relation of ideas where theoretical knowledge is generally used. An example can be the mathematical problem I am currently solving. The only way to answer this question is to apply the rule I have learned during the lecture. My opinions or emotions will not be able to figure out the answer since this problem is based on logic and facts. To put it simply, demonstrative reasoning involves evidence-based reasoning that can reach a definite conclusion, while moral reasoning can involve moral principles based on one's values and beliefs that concerns matters of facts.
Speaking of matters of facts, do you remember the first scene where we ran away from a blet? That could actually be a good example of all reasonings concerning matters of facts seem to be founded on cause and effect. We all know that there is a myth going on inside the campus that whoever takes a picture with the oblation will be delayed. Though we may not have experienced it yet, we relied on other people's experiences regarding this myth. Reason alone without aid of personal experience cannot fully draw an accurate depiction or interference of matters of facts in real existence. For instance, you cannot fully describe how sweet a certain candy is unless you've tasted it firsthand. In other words, before understanding comes experience. Using reasoning and logical connections, we can go beyond the evidence of our memories and senses. For example, if we see a dark cloud, we will assume that it will rain soon. Hypothetical reasoning lets us predict things that are not immediately present in our memory by linking known facts and reaching conclusions from them.
Going back to our schedule, here we are again, stuck in a lecture where we can't quite comprehend what our professor is trying to say. This is what we call academic or skeptical philosophy, also known as doubt, where we continue to question an existence or a phenomenon because we want the truth. Skepticism asks us to consider whether we truly know if one thing causes another, or if we simply assume it based on repeated observations. These assumptions may not be grounded in certainty without experiential evidence. In our case, since the professor has not explained why a part of the Venn diagram is bigger than the other one, we made up our own theories for it to make some sense. However, due to lack of information, none of the assumptions we made can be proven true. Therefore, questions will continue to linger in our minds until the end of the class. Note that in life, and not just in class, there will always be the presence of doubts and questions, as humans cannot truly fully understand the truths of every existence no matter how much experience we acquire. This is where skepticism comes into action. Skepticism will reveal ways of getting by through practical and speculative philosophy. It applies to what we choose to do in real life and how cause and effect work if it is not based on experience.
For our next schedule, which is very interesting, online class will be held for that subject, but we're currently in school. I guess the professor feels the same way as us. Dear, nakapasok ka na ba ng Zoom?
Di pa nga eh. Akala ko ako lang.
Ten minutes nang nakalipas, wala pa rin si sir.
Teka, chat ko nga rin yung iba.
May announcement ba sa G-class? Baka hindi ko lang pala nakita. Huhu.
Wala naman. Baka late lang si sir. Hintayin na lang natin.
This is what we call the feeling of belief. It is produced by objects present to our senses or memories through association. It gives ideas more weight and renders them the governing principle of our action. In this scenario, we believe that our professor for our next class might be running late since we arrived on time, yet he still was not there.
Finally, the day is about to come to an end. But Cheska decided to stay in the library. She said she wanted to know more about the discussion we had in our class a while ago. This is what we call ambiguity. It is the quality of being open to more than one interpretation. Well, maybe as a psychology student, she wanted to see things from different angles to have a better understanding of the topic.
While I stayed in the library, Mari decided to end her day at church. I remember one of her favorite sayings: "If it's God's will, it will be." Whenever there are things that don't go her way, she reminds herself of this. And she reminds herself that God has a better plan for her. This is what we call divine occasionalism. It refers to the belief that we, as humans, are only occasioning things, while God, on the other hand, is the one acting behind the scenes. An example is when I came in late for class. I guess it must have been God's will for me to be late in that class, since if I were not late, I would have been called in recitation.
Of course, not everyone is Catholic, or at least believes in the Lord. Most of the reasons were because they have not felt God's presence. Therefore, they may not be able to appreciate His existence. That is Hume's rejection of divine occasionalism. One cannot fully understand the existence of the Supreme Being if he himself does not feel His presence. Instead of attending the Sunday Mass, they would go on with their lives without worshiping the Lord. But I don't. I believe in the Lord. One of those reasons is because of what is written in the Bible. This is what we call a phenomenon. There is an influence on why we believe a certain thing. One would say that Christianity is not real because anyone could have written the Bible and not the disciples. But I would like to argue, if it's not real, then why would the Bible go against man's greatest desires?
As we went home, one of our professors made an announcement in our Google Classroom. Another reporting, I thought. It has been going on for a few weeks. I guess it will be our setup until our semesters end. This is what we call the principle of custom or habit, in which a constant conjunction of two events leads us to expect them in a certain order. In simpler terms, whenever we start to observe two events happening at the same time, we immediately assume that this pattern will reoccur in the future. For instance, tuwing nakakita tayo ng rainbow, iniisip natin agad na, baka umulan kanina. This occurrence, however, is something that we reason not really based on logic, but actually based by habit. The same thing happens here. Every time our professor makes an announcement on Google Classroom, she assigns a certain topic for us to make a report for the next meeting. Because of this, we always assume that in the next few weeks, our activity for her subject might be also reporting.
And of course, we end the day by studying philosophy not only to impress our napakapoging Sir Ian Calica, but also to learn more about ourselves and the world around us. That's all for today's video. Always remember that what happened in the past may not also happen in the future. Truth be told, we may never really know what the future holds. That's why we must always be prepared for surprises. As David Hume said, our knowledge of the world is limited to our experiences and the relations we can infer from that experience. Beyond this, we have no knowledge or certainty.
More importantly, as David Hume also reminds us, be a philosopher. But amidst your philosophy, still be a man.
This is Mary Pamposa.
And this is Francesca Uy, and this officially marks the end of our day in our lives as sobrang OA, a philosophical approach to everyday living.